test case, but a few of the test case I don't want to execute.
So you have a question like you want to, just like in Selenium or the other tools, we can disable and comments is what we can put. And the same thing if
Yes.
we have in Tosca is what you're asking for.
Yes, but I don't want to delete them. I want to
Right.
uncomment them and execute again.
Right. So here in Tosca, yes, we can like just select the steps that we want to execute. Just I was showing, right, by control and then click the number of steps that you want, and that way, yes, you can execute in Scratchbook. Or let's say if you want to execute it from execution list, and in that way, if you want, then the test cases that the test steps that you don't want to execute, you can disable it. Right click on that particular step, and there's something called disable. So you can just disable the number of steps whatever you want, and then you can just execute the whole test case. So it would not execute the disabled ones. So I'll show you that once I share my screen. But then yeah.
Yeah, just now I did what you said. I selected only few because I don't want to close the demo web shop. I want to continue. But in my test case, close the demo web shop is also there. So every time it is getting closed. So just
Right.
now I selected other test steps, not the close one, but still in the flow that is getting executed.
No, it should not be the case. Can you share your screen and let me, if you can show me that?
Yeah, yeah. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
So these are all my steps. So as you seen, I selected. Here I selected whole test case.
Correct.
You asked me to select one.
Just press enter and then keep clicking the number of steps that you want. Yeah, that's it. And then right click and exit.
Okay.
Right, that's it.
Yeah.
If
Now
you
it
want,
is.
you can just disable, right click, disable the closed browser step, and you can then even continue it. Once
Yes. Yes.
uh, once the test case is completed, at the end, yes, we can enable it. I generally do it that way as well. So just disable the
Is
things that I
that
don't
time?
want. And sorry.
Okay. It's a date and time. So
Yeah, it shows like which user at what time and what date has disabled or done any changes to this. So it Tosca even locks that. So
uh
yeah.
okay. Got it.
So the same thing, even if you right click and then execute on this thing. So you have already opened. It might
Yes. Yes.
create
It's getting used.
yes. So in that case, like we might have to, and the screen is also locked in. Yeah. So
Even yesterday, I have written one of the code to log out.
right.
Later, I realized just to refresh the screen is enough. Then I didn't bring that code into my test cases.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to show you the other one. Yesterday I told you, no, here it is showing takes a screenshot.
In attachments. Okay.
Not exactly in the attachments. I think still also have seen for the modules only we are able to see. Yeah, capture screenshot. So like this, we can take.
Right.
So it is displayed over there. But I'm not sure about what exactly these are. But I tried.
Yeah, you can try see what happens. Okay, and then
So it was
all the
showing like a manual
right.
screenshot has been taken.
Right. So in that module, it might show you again. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It has this one, and then just for reference, further things is what it might be capturing. Uh, so currently, yeah, I don't see any use of that particular screenshot. But yeah, for the models, they might be giving it. Tosca might have realized, or like some request might have come from the client side, and even they felt it. Even this might be a requirement. So that's where they are just giving another option for users to take the screenshot this way.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
Uh, I don't remember. Yesterday I didn't noted my doubts.
Right.
I'll I'll refer again and I'll recall.
Sure. Sure.
Yesterday it has taken a long time for me to take the proper test case. You know, I
Right.
have multiple times I get irritated. Finally, with a peace mind, I done the test case. Still,
Right.
some of the part is left over with that.
Right.
Um, I'll finish, but I got the idea.
Right. Exactly. Uh,
Is Nawaz joining?
no, Nawaz is not feeling well today, so he won't be joining. It just
Okay.
so I will. So if you're done sharing your screen, I will share my screen now.
Yes, yes, I'm done.
Uh, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So here is what yesterday we did this even login functionality thing we were verifying, and I guess even yesterday I've shown you, but then yeah, might have not paid attention, either Nawaz or you. So what I did was I was selecting this way, like shift this and then all these steps, right click and then run. I was doing that way. So just to make sure browser was not getting closed, or even some of the wait time I was not selecting and I was just running directly, even that way. So yeah, execution can be done in that way, disabling, enabling of this. And also, as interview point of view, they might ask few of the shortcuts. So you better also remember the shortcuts. So to jump to the module, it is Control J. To disable any step or enable, it is F7. To execute the test case, it is F6. Cut copy, we already know it. Paste, so not have to worry about. Even to search, it is Control T, search any steps. So this is kind of few shortcuts, yes, they might expect. And also when you are checking checkout, even for that, there is a shortcut called this uh, Control O. See, Control Alt O for checkout tree, just Control O for checkout. It would be Control O. So that shortcuts, yes, a bit of when you are practicing it, keep using it so that you would be familiar with that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yesterday we have also covered execution of that test case from the execution list, and we were also generating the reports, right? So if you see the log now, today I've opened this, and yeah, yesterday's logs were also present. Three passed, one failed, and the failure we already know. So it was not doing this way, and we had made the changes again to our second test case. The reason for this was Edge was not working fine. Like Edge didn't had extension, Tosca extension in that, and then that's where the test case was getting failed. So I've changed it to the default one to the Chrome, and now I can execute only this one test case or the whole test case again, whatever your requirement would be. So I would just run this test case for now, and
Even here, can we see the old result, failed one?
yeah, yes, we can see it. Yeah, so it has opened the browser and it is waiting. Clicked on login.
Now it is in Chrome, right?
Yes, so it has entered this one and verifying error message, and that's it. Yeah, closed. So test case got passed. If you would see our log, yesterday's one was failing, but the latest one is passed. See this correct, right tick mark, and with screenshots we have it.
Okay.
So that is
So,
where.
um, my doubt is from the scratchbook. Can we do like generate reports? Can we do all of that from scratchbook?
No, nothing. So Scratchbook is when we use Scratchbook is while developing any of the test case, and then at that moment only, let's say we just want to test it. While it is in development stage and we have not yet completed, but few things, yes, we just want to check it. So in such cases, we just use Scratchbook is just for the temporary purpose. So yes, while developing, we'll just execute these test cases on that part. But once the development is completed and we are confident enough that, okay, test case development is completed and it can go well, is what we assume. So in that case, yes, we can then go and execute in this execution list. So these are the test cases yes, that we did. We have also seen the modules and yes, naming conventions, as I say, name it according to proper standards so that even everyone, not only you, like if I am working in a team, so even I should be able to understand your modules. Okay, with this name, I should assume or get some idea saying, okay, initial page in the sense, okay, initial page might be the first page that has been there, and then that elements might present in this. So if I see here and then the screenshot, I would get more idea on that. So that's where the naming conventions, be it module or the test case, anywhere that plays a major role. And
Yeah.
so the configurations as well, we have seen it. Going forward, any configurations, let's say we have also seen what the screenshots we were taking, right? So if you see the screenshots that we were taking, we are taking in this directory, right? Now let's say if I had to change this screenshot directory, I don't want this in Tosca execution directory or this thing. I want to change it instead of C, or I want to change it to D, another location. So if I have to do that, uh, what I just have to again come here and change it to D, and then wherever the screenshot thing is there, I just have to go there and change it. And also like changing it manually, sometimes I might get I might miss something somewhere, and then it might go to the older location one. So such thing, when we have some changes when we do, uh, what we generally do is uh, to avoid such situations, to avoid such things, it is like we create some uh, configuration parameter even for this thing, saying directory. So as a variable is what, yes, we will be storing the location, and that location everywhere is what we will be passing. I'll show you in a minute how we can just do that. So what I will do is this is a very simple test case, which is fine.
Oh,
Okay.
here the environment is desktop. You mean what does that mean? You said
Environment desktop is nothing but it takes the screenshot of this desktop thing. So even if you don't specify it by default, yes, it takes this screenshot of the screen where it is executing. So we have two options here in desktop, either mobile, but then if we don't specify it is also fine. It's not going to cause any harm. So by
what
default, it
about
would
the
take
mobile?
mobile. So generally when we do mobile based testing, and then yeah, in that case mobile related, the just that screen would be shown, right? So it might identify that particular screen, and then it can take only that screenshots, mobile based that screenshot. So I haven't used it till now, but yeah, I assume it is in that way. uh,
Okay.
this is for screenshots, yeah. But this is an optional thing. Even if you don't give and if you execute it, it can give us a screenshot. uh, So before just jumping on to the other stuff, let's say we had verified the login functionality, and okay, there's one scenario which I want to just focus more on, which is, yeah, we were verifying it. Wait on for this thing to appear. So what I will do is I'll execute and I will show you this. Right click, run. So I'm logging in with valid credentials. As soon as I logged in, let's say the next requirement was to uh, capture the capture the username present on the screen. So on this page, let's say I want to store, capture this email, and then I might use this value somewhere else in the later part of my stage. So if it is that way, so I'm just taking it this as an example, but yeah, anything you want, you can just capture it. So I'll show you how we can capture this sort of detail. So
So we need to use module type as buffer, right?
action mode as well.
Ah, action.
Action mode as buffer, yes, and then that would give us to help us to capture the field. uh, Simplest one I just want to see. I'll just copy this test case. So buffer data. What I'll do is, yes, I'll open application. I'll just enter email ID. I will just enter password. What I will do is I won't click on login, and I'll just delete all the steps. I just want to log in. Then at the very next step, let's say I just want to also make sure is login. I can even run the individual step. A few I if I would run this, it would just run that single step. Uh, so it has entered this. After entering, what I will be doing is just to make sure that email has been filled with this value. I just want to see that. So I want to just buffer it. How I can do even in that case is I'll just take that module first, where that module is. This one is the module. I'll just drag and drop onto here, and then I'll say capture or get or anything. Capture email entered. So whatever email was entered, I just want to capture it. If it is that, what I can do is action mode again, yes, verify, not verify, sorry, buffer, and then I can say this is any variable name. So in what you want to store this value, I want to store that in entered username as a variable. I'm just giving it. So in this variable, I want to store the value. So once I give this an action mode as buffer, and now if I execute, it should capture this value that is entered, pradeeptawalji@gmail.com. If you would see,
So there, the entered email name, username. For that also, the data type will be string because we selected over there. Is it correct?
correct, that's right. So the data type for this is string. And mostly, yes, we use string only. There are very rare chances where we use numeric or other data type. But yeah, by default, string is the most used one. So if you see now
For that,
enter data,
if we want to give some numeric value, then we have to select a numeric.
uh,
Yeah.
numeric value, we can still store that numeric as a string. String of that, it is not going to cause any harm. But then that if you just store as a numeric like string, and later if you just have to interpret it as number, then the string that you have stored 1 2 3 can be converted into numeric by some other ways. I will also show you those things in the later part of sessions. So I'll show how you can convert or yeah, change it a string to a numeric assume. So in string, in double quotes, let's say if it is 1 2 3, okay, I'll show you this part. So generally 1 2 3 is a numeric, we assume, right? A number. And then if it is double quotes or single quotes, if it is this way, so number is 1 2 3, but due to this thing, it gets into string. Now this is string. When even Tosca, let's say it has stored this value, so string, and we want it to be just numeric. So after storing it as string, we can convert that to a number by some things. So that things I will show you later how we can do that. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, buffer is this way we just can capture it. So I've just given it here. Or sometimes if you would see this value, inspect, close it. So this one it is, it's not the correct one. We'll go to the next thing. Uh, so to this field, let's say to this field, I'll just again capture. So one I've did I've buffered it, this one, and okay, let's say I'm just, so here in this test case only, after wait on, I would want to see how I can use it. Okay, So after entering login credentials, I would be on the logged in screen, and here I'm just waiting for this thing to appear. After that, immediately what I will do is I will try to capture, as I said, capture the wait on user account. So on this, I'll say capture or get uh, displayed email ID or the user account or username, anything. So in here, my action mode would be buffer, and then I know it would be user account or yes, any variable, whatever you want. And the naming convention I would prefer is whenever I give caps in a camel case, starting with capital, that is still fine. But then I won't prefer having an space here. So I can just remove this one. I can say user and then next word, it should be capital, starting with capital. And again, furthermore, if it is anything else, any other word, it should start with capital and then again name. So I just prefer it that way. So this way is what we give, and then once I execute it, now we have that page already in place. And in the value section, I'm just giving it uh, that part. So if I execute, you see this is green in color, and which means it has successfully executed and the value was stored. So this is what it is doing. Sometimes you might still find it this value over here, but when we say just buffer of that in the value section, we might not be able to get it. So why we are getting currently here is, if you see the tag of that, it is what inner text. So these are nothing but in the in tag, opening and closing of the tag, there's a text. So this is nothing but an inner text. So inner text by default, Tosca would take the value, and when we are buffering it, it refers to inner text. And sometimes if it doesn't refers to, what we have to make sure is in here, in this, we can select inner text. We can say inner text of this property, I want to store buffer into this variable. So this is the way that we can do it. So of this element, the inner text, I want to store in a variable. And when we run, so this element's properties inner text would be captured. This is inner text. So sometimes now, as I said, this is inner text, this is fine. But some other variables, when you see it somewhere or the other, uh,
But
right.
Pradeep, here we have taken what we have given the email. So it can't be taken from the email field, only from this user name.
Only this username from the email field. From here,
Yeah,
you mean?
only from here only it is collecting, right?
Right. So yeah, this is kind of just a verification purpose. Like I'm just saying
Mhm.
this how to capture it. Yes, we can. We already know. Okay, this is the email ID, and then coming here is what it would show that only. But then even we have to sort of kind of keep an verification point, right? So whatever we have entered is also displaying. So testing, when we say, when we do, that is what we have to just make sure, be it manual or through automation as well. So whatever email ID you have entered in previous screen is what it is displaying in the next screen. So if we want to see it, if we want to store it, and if we want to verify it, we can do it in this way. So we can store that in something and then check this value if it is in whatever we have entered or not. And
Yeah.
some other requirement would be like,
Only
so
doubt is it is collecting from the email field itself.
yes, yes, email field
Okay.
itself it is collecting. And then the other thing that I wanted to just focus on here is, if sometimes when you see a value over here, then the tag, when you say, it might not be in the inner text. Inner text would be like empty. So if you see this spans inner text, there is no text in between this, so which means there is no inner text. So no inner text for this thing. and if you just scan this sort of element and write the value buffer of some variable, you would get empty. So when you get that thing empty, which means, okay, there is no such inner text. But then you would see what other values, if you see something value over here and it is not showing, the value that's shown is, can be like, it is stored in a variable called and an attribute called value. And in that value, sometimes it would be stored like pradeepdawalji@gmail.com. So depending on how the developer has built it goes that way. So the other thing, if we are not getting the expected thing from an inner text, but that text is there on the screen, so we can either use just normal text, we can remove that and explicitly write just text, and we can execute it. And if in text we are getting it, fine, we can get that. So you can check this way. Or even instead of text, sometimes, as I said, in other variable, other attribute, it would be stored, which is what value, value. So in value I just want that what is stored for this variable. So which means here we can just give the properties whatever we can find it. So sometimes when you don't know where this value is being stored, what you can do is scan that element, and then when you scan it, uh, I'll show you this thing again. So because I have faced this issue when I was working initially, and I've seen, so that was my observation where I had made it. And yeah, that is why I'm just focusing here on this part. So if I select this element, if I see this properties where this value is stored, it is there in generally inner text, you see. So inner text of this property, yes. So directly you can say buffer if you want to do on an inner text, it would be working fine. And the other thing is sometimes here value section would also be there. So value, if inner text is empty, and if you have that text, it might present in value. So in that case, you can take value as a attribute. And then somewhere other things. So this is just for reference is what I just wanted to show, why I'm just taking it here inner text or any other value section or just text. So that goes depending on what we have. For now, inner text is fine. Or also if you don't specify this, by default, it is taking that way and it is working fine. So you can keep it that way. So here, yes, we are buffering some sort of data from an application. And then this user account email. Later going forward, if we want somewhere to use, we can use this one. Or the other thing would be like, as you said, in the entered email thing, okay, this is what it is entering. So what I want to do over here is I actually want that to be further enhanced, right? Okay, here only I will do it. Let it be. So, buffer data, this is fine. Else I'll just continue the same test case. It's using buffers. So what I am going to do is, so if you see your test case, it is what? Entering data in this email field password, and later we are just getting it onto something. Also, we are verifying the user account. Is that so? Now if we just change the login credentials, instead of Pradeep, let's say if we use someone else credential, and that credential, if we just enter here, and then what all things you have to change, you have to make sure you have to come here, you have to change this email field password for that user. And then yes, the other thing, this would work fine, this would also work fine. This here again, this email ID is what we have to change uh, to make our test case work properly. fine, right? So this thing, so here it is just 1 2 test case and just couple of steps and not too much of this thing. So we can identify, okay, at this place we have used this thing, and immediately we can just go and change that stuff. But then imagine this picture in a bigger way. So if we have many test cases and many steps, and it is and we are not sure at how many, at what steps we might have used email id field. It's just email id I'm just referring to, but it can be any other data as well. So that data, when we are entering it, hundreds and steps if we have, we just have to check one by one step thoroughly, and then just make sure, okay, if we are changing at one place, other places also we have to change it. So this is again a tedious task. So instead of doing this thing in this way, what the best approach is, even in other automation tools. So what we call is, we need to store some sort of data values in a variable, and that variable is what we have to store throughout. So what are the usage of variable? What it does is, it just holds some value, whatever value you would give, either string or numeric or whatever date, anything. So it stores that data, and that stored data is what, in our test case, in our step, wherever we need that sort of data, we will just refer to that variable that we have stored. So for example, here it is like email id and password. So these two things, right? What I would do is, so in the test case, I would right click, uh, search and add uh, test step. So even before this, I'll just delete everything for now, just empty test case. And in an empty test case, first thing is, I want to store some variables, right? So buffers, again, buffers, a set thing. So we have something called tbox set buffers. So tbox set buffers allow us to store the variables that I was talking about. So if you see this module is coming from buffer operations in this thing, tbox set buffer. So what this does is, here it is like name and then the value. So if we give the buffer name is what, my uh, email id, I would say, and then the value of that is, I would say, pradeep at gmail.com. So this is tbox set buffer. With this step, what, when this thing is executed, what it is doing, it is making sure that a variable is created with name, email id, and that variable value would be this value, pradeep at gmail.com. And generally where we can see these variables are, if you go to this tools, and then there is something called buffer viewer. And in buffer viewer, you see I have this many buffer names and the buffer values of that. So executed things. So you see the previous execution, we had buffered what, entered username, we were buffering it. So entered username was created, and then the value of that buffer is also created. So same way, now if you see email id, it is email is this, just email id, there is no such buffer and the value. This is, we have just created it, just now we have created it. And then once whatever we created, until and unless we delete it, it would be shown in this buffer viewer. So we are trying to create some data. So what I would do is, I would just right click and run this buffer viewer. Now once I execute it, it should pass basically. And then once it pass, whatever we have said it here, so you see email id with this value has been created. Now once it is created, you see this email id buffer with name, email id has been set to value this. That is what we have asked to do, and it is doing that way. You see our test case. Now, so in here, same way, I had created email id, right? I can also create password for that. So password, again, for password is 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? And then two variables is what for now I am creating it. Tbox set buffer. I'll just remove this. Now we don't need buffer viewer. So email ID and password, yes, we have, and then here we can keep it this way, or you can say setting some prerequisite data. So this is what before our execution we want this data is what we can say. So we can say prerequisite data or set data for our test case, so something like that, or setting email ID and password, whatever is you think would be best to identify this step, you can write it. I would say set data for test case. I will write it in this way for understanding. So set data for test case, and in this set in the sense I'll say buffer as well, just to be more specific. Buffer data for test case. So in this, I'm just buffering, setting the data. This couple of things. Later, once we are developing and something, if we want it, again we can come here and then add. After that, we'll realize, okay, I want what any other thing. I'm just username. Let's say if you have username ABC, so something like that. Yes, we can come here and add it if you want it that way. Just remove it. So we can keep continue adding. There's no limitation, and again, how many to add this thing, but based on your requirement, yes, you just do it. So and create only those variables where you are going to use this thing. So let's say you have in your steps, you have like email, password, and only two things you are going to use, but you have created five, which is what another three are useless. So in that case, you should not be creating those data which is not required for your test case. And now email ID, password, I have did it. And what I will do is I'll do that same modification in my test case. So I'll use the same steps in this only. I will just change it. The first step is to do that buffer, get data, and then I'm just opening browser, wait time, and yeah, email ID. So here, how I can use that uh, variable. So in email ID field, so instead of hard coding it, giving a static value to our test case, uh, we are passing a variable. So this is one way of storing a data. So in test case, in Tosca, just within the test case, test step, we can store data. But then we have seen kind of disadvantage, meaning when we give it to the test case, we don't know if we are going to change it at later part of stage. We won't be able to identify at how many places and where all we have given those things. We have to just make sure clearly and do it very thoroughly, just to make sure everything is working fine. So to avoid that, what we can do is we have created a buffer, and then that buffer is what we are giving it here. So how we can refer to that buffer? In Tosca, we can just say whenever you want this thing, we open this curly braces, and B is for buffer. If you would see this thing here, buffer or temporarily saved section. So you can read more about this thing if you want over here. So buffer is, this is again syntax of buffer, and then square bracket is what we write it. Once we open this square bracket, whatever buffers are you have created, that is showing in buffer viewer, the stored is what it would be showing here. So you see, and all these things can be used. So I would say from this I need email ID, and that suggestion is also showing here. So you just don't click on this, mouse click on that buffer viewer is not working. Again, this is from Tosca side. So when you have this suggestion and it is highlighting on this thing, you can just hit enter. So email ID, and then close the square bracket that you have opened, and curly braces also that is opened. I'm just closing it, and as soon as you just come out of this, the color of this should get changed. Change it to this thing. So buffer be this thing, and then that way. So which means the syntax is what correctly it is referring to. Now when I just right click on this email ID and translate what value is stored in this email ID is what it would be shown.
And
Now
if I have three or four users names, then
what is that? Sorry.
if we stored four users details over there in the email ID, That
Right, four
how?
users. So when you give four users, so you would have to give unique. So the same let's say email ID, and then with the same email ID, if you just want to store the value with ABC, abc@gmail.com, right? So four times if you are doing it, when you execute it, if it is same variable, what Tosca would do is it would override this value. For the first time, it would set Pradeep Dawalji, but the very next step, when it encounters the same variable changing some value, so it overrides this Pradeep Dawalji with this value. And then same way, whatever the last one would be, it would be stored that way. So when you are giving variables, make sure it is unique. Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So four variables if you want to store, username one, email ID two, email ID three, email ID four. And then whenever you go to the test step where you want to use, here you specify either you want one email ID, two, three, or four. You just have to specify that.
Yeah, got it.
Right. And only when you have executed this, right click execute, that is where you would be what getting this translate value and also the suggestion. So you see password we have not executed, and for password if I want to write the syntax, it is what buffer of curly braces buffer of p capital PASS. Okay, it is still there when we executed, I don't know, but if you have not executed this 123, so okay, it is yeah, that password is something different. So if you would see password 123, this I might have used somewhere else, and that is where it is showing. But variable name, if you have created something and you have not right click run, then in the suggestion here, you might not get that uh, suggestions here. So, but then you can just still write that and then execute the whole test case. So it would create the buffer, and when it goes to this step, the value is already stored. That value would be passed here. So here, if you are translating it, for now it is showing 123. But then this 123 was stored at some previous run. I don't know when it was run. And then if you would see here, password. So this is 123. I can even remove this, or I would just, I would say I won't use it. So it is not showing. And then I'll just change it to something else. So I've just removed it, and then now if I just translate it, what it does is it is showing empty. So password is empty. It has nothing. Or you can even manually set password to 1234 and then continue the execution from here. Sometimes I do it that way instead of okay, I forgot to execute this and then do it. So yeah, as a practice, execute this thing. Once you execute this one, so all the variables would be initialized with those values, and then once we have it, okay, so we have this thing. And now when you go to your test case, if you translate values, you would say, okay, email ID would have this with this value, and the password, if you translate, the value would be the one that we have set. You see, that one would be coming. So same way, yes, everywhere now, wherever you want this email ID thing, I can just copy this, and I have seen it. Okay, this I'm just buffering it. I'm not entering it, but then verifying. At verifying place, I'm just giving that hard coded static value. This is hard code or the static value which we are giving. So in our test case, it shouldn't be like static or hard coded value. It should be coming either from buffer, some variable, yeah, some other places wherein that we can change it. So how just pradeepdawalji@gmail.com is what I want to replace this with buffer of email ID. That's it. So it would verify that. And same way, yes, anywhere else, if we have anything, we will get that thing. So that's it for now. I would have only this thing. And yeah, now if you execute the test case, it executes in the expected way. So it sets the buffer of those thing, and you see, it has already set the buffer, and then it is going to the next steps, clicking on login, entering what we have given in the buffer. So buffer, now if you change Pradeep Daj, instead of that your credentials, if you put it and then execute it, so it would just only at one place we have to change it. Only at this one place you just change it and give your password, and then you can just directly execute it. And when you keep executing it, that values would be entered in that application. Even verifying, it would verify that entered value only. So is it clear about buffers? This is a very
Yes,
common
Pradeep.
thing that we use. So any
I
doubts?
have one
So
doubt. Yeah. So here to save the given buffer ID, so you are running that wherever you have given that buffer. So you are
yeah,
running that. Instead of that, can't we save explicitly and use that one?
uh, sorry, I didn't get your question. Can you repeat?
So through execution only, you are saving that value to the buffers, whatever the value
Uh,
you have given.
okay. So you want explicitly here to, yeah. Uh, Here as well, yes, you can add buffers, explicit buffers. So here we get empty field. Here you can set, okay, account is what I can say, and then account value, you can say some value, some random value. And now you can use account wherever you want. Here you can say buffer of account. You see that account thing is coming, and then enter, and this thing, that's it. So this, so the value, this value would be sitting here in this place for this value.
Okay, because we might forget to run that step.
Right. So explicitly, yes, you can set it, but then when you execute it from the execution list, and or if this test case, if your test cases are being executed by some other user, so these buffers won't be uh, passed on to that user's machine. So these buffers are temporarily and only to your machine. So uh, so if you are
But
executing this,
even though we are checking all, don't they get
yes,
those buffers?
it won't go. It, even if you're checking in, this buffers won't be passed to that other user's machine. So uh, in that case, so here you have used two, but later going forward you have used three or four variables, and that another third or fourth you have just set it for temporary purpose in your machine. So when you execute, it would work for you, but then when other execute, it would say it had only two, but third and fourth is what you were executing. So at third place, when you give a variable or a buffer which is not there in the system, and if you execute, what Tosca would throw is this buffer is not stored in the application. So it's nowhere stored in Tosca, and I'm unable to identify what value I have to give for that variable. So that is where the test case, Tosca test case, gets failed. And if you see the failure reason, no matching tab was found. Okay, tab was not there. Uh, Demo web shop, if the tab is there, like this thing, it was failing because of the tab reason. But then if you see this one, now it has a tab, but Tosca test step got failed. And you see this warning we get, buffer with name was not found. So there's no such buffer that is stored in the buffer viewer. So to make this thing work, what you have to do is we have to create this buffer initially in your step and set it to some value, right? Am I clear?
Yeah, I got it. I need to
Uh,
practice.
yes. So keep practicing it. This is a very commonly used ones. That is why I'm just taking more time in under making you all understand this thing, because initially I used to even get confused. What is this buffer and why we use buffer action mode? Why we use this thing and why we have to use like this? What happens and all? but since I've uh, good experience now, so that's where I'm just relating things how I used to feel about, and then just comparing with the same thing. So yeah, even other sources, if you would be there, you might find about this thing, but not in this detail, not in this sort of explanation. Yeah, I would be more focusing on the things what I have. I would relate it, and then based on that, I do it, just to make you all understand. So I have whatever things I am explaining, it is clear, very clear to you. Yeah, so this is about a buffer viewers thing. So in tomorrow's session, what I will be doing is uh, I would be furthermore enhancing this thing. So we have this steps. I see there are many repeated things, repeated steps in our test cases. So how we can avoid this repeated things, and what's the best approach? So the other part, the only thing I was talking about was screenshots, right? So here in the screenshots, we have given this directory, and I wanted to change the screenshot directory to some other thing. So it is used here, and I don't know how many places, how many test cases I have used this directory. And going forward, if I wanted to change this directory, I have to go to each individual step and change it, or else you can again set buffer, add a variable called directory, and then pass buffer of directory in everywhere. You can do that one, or this is again a configuration thing as well. We can give it. So what we can do is I'll store this thing in a configuration. I'll go to the configuration section. In the configuration, I will create one more variable called what I'll say is directory. I would just say directory over here. And then in directory, so what I am doing is I'm giving the whole thing, but let's say I don't want to give whole thing. Directory, I can say screenshot directory specifically if it is screenshot, but this variable, I don't only want to use only for screenshot. I might use it for some other thing. So in that way, I'm not renaming it to screenshot directory. I can even do that, but I'm not referring it to that way. And yeah, I won't give it till this location. So I'll just say it is till only till directory. Only till directory is what I am giving it. So directly this location, and when you go to your test case, we have already imported that in our test configuration. So you see whatever changes we have done over there, it is going to reflect over here. And then this one, now we can use anywhere under this folder. So if you see in application, we have not done. So another application, another folder, if we just create it, uh, some other folder, and then here in this, we don't have that configuration. So if we wanted that configuration, again, what we have to do is we have to click, drag, and drop that onto this. This is one, or else uh, instead of this, what we can do is if we want in other steps, other things as well, instead of drag and dropping it over here, we can do it at the higher level wherever you would use. You can do it at the test cases as well, so that that thing would be shown, or in the application, or over here like that. So now for now we are good with this thing. We have a screenshot over here, and yeah, I want to change this path. Now this path, when you see, so from here till here, it is like I don't want to give this as static value. This is, I just want it in a dynamic way, right? So what I can do is we have that stored in that configuration thing, which is over here. So how we can refer to that configuration? I've already told you the syntax. What is the syntax?
Open braces and CP
Correct.
in the middle of the braces directory.
Correct. Exactly. So DIRECTOR. Sometimes you won't get that suggestions. but then even then don't worry about that. You just make sure you are just writing everything correctly, and then if you just uh, translate it, you would get to see that value. So now the value in this thing is this with this thing and then screenshots. You see, so cp of directory and then screenshots. So since this is screenshots, I am attaching another thing is screenshots thing. So same thing. Now I'm storing it in screenshots thing. Same way, wherever we want. Let's say we want it here. So I don't want to use it this one. I will just rename it to cp of directory and then screenshots. So this folder. Same way everywhere else, yes, wherever we have used, we will just uh, change it to that value. And now when you execute, the screenshots would be stored in this directory. And if you wanted to change the directory, if you don't want to give it in C, this thing here, what you have to do is instead of C, change it to D over here itself, or D or any other value, any other variable you want. Just change it here to which location you want. And that's it. You don't have to change your test steps, the test cases. So that is the use of configurations thing. So when there is a change in your a requirement or something, and if it is not specific to your test case, only to just some general settings, general things, uh, so it is advisable that those kind of things you just put it in configuration things, and then just change the configuration. So every execution when you do, you have to just make sure what configurations are set. You need to review it, and then if you are fine with the configurations, then go and execute it. So it is not advisable like for every run, for everything. uh, if you are changing your code, your test case that is designed and it is completed, it is not good practice to change your test steps at any moment. So in that case, we just set it as configuration things, and that configurations, yes, we give it over here. I'll keep it in C. I'm fine with this location. So are you clear on why we are setting this as configuration thing and why we have to use
Yeah,
configurations?
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Just to not make hard code the things.
Correct, correct. And anything, if going forward something changes, you have to just change at one place, one location, and everywhere it gets reflected. So that is the use of even buffers, even variables that we are using it. So in our test cases, whenever we create it that way. So we create variables, and then in our steps, if you see any project that is developed, and then if you review those things, you would hardly find a static data in the test step. Most of that things would be stored in buffer variables or passing it from some other test case design or some other data source. Uh, but then in test step, there won't be any static data. So yeah, this is it for today's session. Any doubts, Aruna? Anything you want to ask?
No, Pradeep, it is clear.
Yeah, right. Okay, okay then. I guess if you don't have any doubts, we are good to close. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep. Bye.